sometimes will conflate fish oil with omega-3 supplements. So what I say is that like sometimes you'll see the brand, or not the brand, you'll see it labeled as fish oil, but you look at the back and of per gram, you might only have 100 milligrams, which is a tenth of EPA and DHA, and the rest of it is filler with different fatty acids, monounsaturated fatty acids. So really, I think it's careful for us to kind of talk in the context of EPA and DHA, and not necessarily fish oil. But when we communicate with the general public, we say fish oil. But that's my disclaimer there. I think what we try to do is we're using omega-3s as a means to kind of understand the regulation of metabolism. So the doses that we use in our studies are not ones that I would suggest the general public should be moving forward with just yet. They're very high doses, around 5 grams.
That's interesting. Wait, but before you go back, what should someone look at? For example, let's say you're going to Whole Foods. I don't know if you have Whole Foods out there, but let's say you're going to one of your health food stores. No fish oil is getting past you, right? So you're picking up the bottle. What exactly are you looking for? What dosing are you looking for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So on the back of each fish oil, a commercially available fish oil will have around 30% of EPA plus DHA. So that's generally what is normally on the shelves. You can get higher quality and higher grade. So what I typically look for is the EPA and DHA content. So what you will often see is them expressed in something called milligrams on the back of, say, it's the bottle. And if you're looking to get 500 milligrams per day, what you can do is you can look at the back and it'll either say per serving or per one soft gel or 1 gram of soft gel, how much you get. And for myself, I would typically, if anything starts to get below 30% is when I become concerned. And you'll notice that a lot of the cheaper products typically have EPA and DHA content of that fish oil product that is lower than 30%. So typically it's just that we go for things that are like around 30% or higher for the fish oil product of EPA plus DHA.
So there's no number of EPA aside from percentage that you're looking for in terms of 800 milligrams.
Well, I would typically look for a combination of EPA plus DHA that comes to 500 milligrams. And that would help, if you are looking to get 500 milligrams per day, which is around what the recommendations are for people without cardiovascular disease, then that's kind of what I would look to do.
Do you think that is enough?
Well, I'm going to do the scientist response here and say it depends. And it's all context specific. So, there's recommendations there for healthy people. There's recommendations for people with cardiovascular disease. I don't think, in my opinion right now, we have enough scientific evidence available to make prescription recommendations to improve skeletal muscle health. I'd say it's going to be a few years before we get there, but I think the first thing is, do no harm. And I'm not an RD or a physician, or registered dietitian or physician, so I wouldn't be prescribing anybody anything. But I'd say that there's no real harm in going up to around 2 grams per day of EPA plus DHA, at least from what I've seen in the literature. And there appears to be quite significant benefit if you look at Bill Harris's work with the omega-3 index, that the second you get a little bit higher into those ranges, there seems to be beneficial impacts across the board for health.
And I love that you brought up the omega-3 index, because that is something you guys listening can have your provider do. An omega-3 index is something that can be, you can get that through blood work. Is there a percentage that you like to see in the omega-3 index of omega-3 fatty acids?
Yeah, so I'm careful with this. I mean, in terms of cardiovascular disease risk, off the top of my head, I believe it's around 8% is what people are looking towards the upper end. In terms of muscle, I am a little bit skeptical when I see people using the omega-3 index as a reference for skeletal muscle health, because I just don't think the evidence is there yet for us to say to protect against or to improve muscle with aging, you need this percentage. But I'd say that using it as a broad gauge for omega-3 status is quite helpful. And again, I haven't familiarized myself with the index for a while now, but I think around 8% is something that is typically a healthy level.
Yeah, I would agree. We like to see people between 8 and 12 or so, just for overall health. It's a goal that we shoot for. Now, in terms of mechanism of action, let's talk a little bit about the mechanism of action and what the potential benefits are of omega-3 fatty acids.
Yeah, sure. So are we talking muscle specific?
You can talk
or general?
Whatever you would like. Your favorite topic is what we want to hear about.
So I actually think we don't really know There's some really interesting papers out there now that I have, and they're review papers by people who've done a lot of work in cardiovascular physiology. And I just think we know that, at least from a cardiovascular perspective, there is some positive evidence there, and some recent trials using Vascepa, which is a kind of pure form of EPA, is showing some positive results in the cardiovascular world. But I still don't think we've nailed down the mechanism, at least in that perspective. When it comes to muscle, the first thing is that I'm now, we do need more work. I need to see a little more high quality RCTs before I'm quite convinced it's beneficial for muscle, but we're going in that direction. I actually think I've got a hunch that it is related to incorporation into the membranes and potentially influencing mitochondria, which are obviously the powerhouse of the cell. They create the energy. And I think there's something related to the incorporation into the membrane, and then also improving mitochondrial health and function, which I know is a very broad term, but that's the kind of overall mechanism that I think from a skeletal muscle perspective might be working. But again, we just need a lot more work in the area before we can really start pinning those mechanisms down.